Prada stores and Gucci stores, there's not going to be any fast food. And what they deem fast food is exactly what it is: food that's pre-prepared, and it goes and it's shipped to McDonald's, and then they warm it up and heat it up and serve it to you. But what they can have in those spaces are restaurants and stuff like that, which is healthier food. And then when you get into more nicer areas, say where it's like a kind of a mix, or it's like, you know, where the millennials live, you can only have 9 fast food restaurants within this distance, and that's it. But then when you go into the inner city areas, there is no cap. There's no cap on how many fast food restaurants. That's why you'll see on one street, there'll be 2 McDonald's on one street, or there'll be a Burger King, a Jack in the Box, and a KFC within all on the same block. That's why we have these. So it's important for us to understand how the situation how we got into the situation that we're in, and why there's such a saturation in the hoods or in the urban areas. And what is happening now is that a lot of people in the communities are becoming aware of these laws, and they're fighting against them, and fast food companies don't. They're like, oh, we can't, it's not racist to have these urban areas be saturated with fast food. They're trying to come up with so many excuses to fight that. And like I said, there's been so many studies showing that fast food causes so many diseases, and to me it seems like people of color have always been linked into unhealthy foods, and then that's where this slide comes in. Oh, that's the wrong one. That's where this slide comes in. And I was telling you how, okay, so it's interesting for us to know how soul food got to be soul food. So a lot of people probably know this, but a lot of them don't. The reason why we have soul food is not soul food, it's slave food. The reason we got soul food is because the slave masters, when we got brought over here, or the slaves that got over here, and the indigenous peoples that were here were turned into slaves, then the slave masters had to feed them. So what were they feeding them? The leftovers, the stuff that is considered soul food today: pig's feet, chitlins, collard greens, the stuff the vegetables that were so bitter that you had to cook them for hours and hours for them to taste good. Pig's feet. Who in the hell wants to eat someone else's feet? That don't make no sense. And so we were given all the bad food, and it was handed down by the slave owners. And how does this compare to what's going on today? Look what's going on. You have the nice neighborhoods that are full of food. You have Whole Foods, this, and how my wife was saying earlier, we're being priced out of all the good food, but being priced into all the bad food, which is McDonald's, KFC, churches, and so on and so forth. And that's it's still the same thing that's going on. It's just been transformed and manipulated in a way so that it's subtle and that we can't really see it. So it's important that we understand what's going on. And McDonald's is doing the same thing that soul food did, and now it's being and that's not a good thing. Soul food is like there's a lot of arguments in the black community. Oh, soul food, you can't talk about soul food like that. Well, I mean, look at the history of it, and then look at the health of people of color today. You look at us, we're 17% of the population, but we're the #1 sufferers of heart disease, stroke, diabetes, cancer, obesity. And all these things that I named, like 80% of them are on the top 10 list of killers that has been posted by the CDC. And and this is how you know, like, they don't have to kill us out here in the police with the cops and stuff. They're shooting us, so they can kill us with the food, and it can be very subtle. No one would even know, unless you know your history. All right, and then speaking of history, I'm going to talk to you about Christopher Columbus, because this is interesting. A lot of people don't know this about him, but Christopher Columbus, before he came, it was nice, and there was a lot of things that weren't taking place in the United States. But when Chris came, he brought some gifts. So, right? Colonization is one of them. And we see colonization. A lot of people don't know what colonization is. Just taking over the land, Like, for example, California used to be Mexico. And now it's not. And now it's America. They're colonizing and taking over the lands, taking over the tradition and all of that stuff. Smallpox, that's another thing. That was nice. And then cows. A lot of people don't know this, but before Christopher Columbus came to the Americas, cows didn't exist here. They weren't here. But when Christopher Columbus came to the Americas, he saw this land, he saw what the opportunity, he was like, oh, we can take this over. So in order to come and inhabit these lands, we need to bring our religion to take over the lands to colonize. You need to bring your religion, and you need to bring your culture, and you need to bring your food. And the things that they brought with them were cows. And along with cows came milk and cheese. And the practice of milking and cheesing came from Spain. That had nothing to do in here. In Africa, they don't have cows. And out here, they didn't have cows. The practice of milking came from Spain. It's not the indigenous peoples that were here. They didn't eat any milk, or they didn't drink milk. They didn't eat cheese. It was a plant-based diet. And you can look at we have the China study that shows that even Asian people, in Asia, they don't drink a lot of milk and they don't eat cheese or anything like that. It's not even in their diet. It's not even in their makeup. The only reason that milk and cheese and sour cream are in America is because of colonization. You can look at the Mexican cuisine, and you look at Mexican cuisine, you look at a taco, a real Mexican taco, there's no cheese on the taco, there's no sour cream on the burritos, but that when you get closer to America, to California, Texas, it's Tex-Mex, and there's when the sour cream and cheese and stuff come on. I mean, the burrito's not even Mexican food, that was made up in America. A lot of people don't know that. All right, and then to prove my point even further, we can look at the rates of lactose intolerance in people of color. Not just black people, people of color, period. Asian people, 90 to 100% lactose intolerant. Indigenous North Americans, which are Indians, 80 to 100% lactose intolerant. The list goes down. Asian, African, African American. Everybody is 75% or more lactose intolerant. But then when you get down here to the Caucasian people, you see that they're only 5 to 15% lactose intolerant. So you see that the rules of the laws that are made for milk and dairy, like for example, the milk law in schools, is inherently racist because this shows, all these studies show that people of color are lactose intolerant. And let me explain to you about the milk laws in America, the milk laws in the schools, in some of the schools. It started in the South back in the day, and they started giving it in the urban communities to people of color. They were like, oh, kids are starving. We're going to give them milk to fatten them up and help them out. They tried to say, oh, we're too ill, we don't have enough strong people to fight the wars, and so they started feeding black people in the inner communities milk and cheese and stuff. That's what I said. They made it mandatory for students to drink milk, to get the milk on their tray and take a sip of the milk. And in order to, and so they started that in the black communities and all that stuff, and it's happening now. But if most people, all people of color, most of them, 90%, 75%, whatever, more are lactose intolerant, why is it a school law for every student to drink the milk before they throw it out? That means that law is inherently racist. It's made for white people who were only 5 to 10% lactose intolerant, not people of color who were 70, 90, 100% lactose intolerant. And so it's very important for us to know the history of things, how things came to be, like the milk laws, like zoning laws, and this explains why the areas that we live in are in the situation they are now. The ghettos are in the way that they are now. Why obesity is such a high rate for younger kids. And it's because the laws are not set up for everyone. The laws are not inclusive. These laws were put in place in the 1900s, early, when it was racist in the state, and it's still racist now, but when it was blatantly racist in this country. I feel like I'm forgetting something. Let's see. Am I forgetting it? You said what? No, 3. What are you talking about? Oh, yeah, the footnote. What did I forget? Yeah, the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. Huh? It's a screenshot. Thank you. All right, so the solution is, all right, so these are solutions. We got, there's racism in the laws. It's important for everyone to know the laws and how they came to be. And it's like, because otherwise, all they're doing, like I said, is just changing the words and changing it up a little bit, so that way they can just slide by with rules. Like, oh, it's okay, let's just change it from racial zoning to blight. And, we're not going to say we're going to move the black people out of the neighborhoods and the Asians and the Mexicans out of the neighborhoods to protect our zones and where we're living. We're just going to call it community, whatever. You know, so that's what they're doing. It's important for us to understand. So solutions, taking action, start demanding, for one thing, start demanding healthier foods in your local grocery stores, because supply demand is important. If you go to your bodega, if you live in an area where you don't have a real grocery store, go to your local bodega, talk to the owner and say, you know, we would like some fruits and vegetables. If you put fruits and vegetables in here, we'll buy them. And then that's gaining some kind of ground, because that's better than having nothing. You know, start reducing meat or take it out altogether. Like I said, I'm giving you proof that you know, people of color are not. We're not supposed to be drinking milk. It's proven, or not most of us at least. And then too, also a big thing that's going on in the black community is diabetes. Black people, we call it the sugars. You know. But the reality is that, yeah, sugar has a part to play in it, but a lot of people don't know what diabetes really starts from. All right, so first, let me break it down. My nerd is about to come out. But, okay, so anyway, so when we eat meat, meat has saturated fat. Saturated fat is only found in animal products and oils that are man-made and that solidify, like Crisco, or unfortunately coconut oil. I love coconut oil. Anyways. And what it does is it goes to your pancreas. When you eat the saturated fat, it goes to your pancreas where insulin is made in your body. And insulin is what regulates your sugar levels in your body, right? So the saturated fat goes to your pancreas, chokes out your beta cells, which create insulin for your body, and then you become diabetic. UCLA just released a study that says 50% of California is pre-diabetic and they don't even know it. So, and that's why, you know, we're under the assumption that diabetes is caused by the sugars. Sugars does play a role in diabetes, but it's really the meat that you're eating is choking out your defense mechanism, your sugar level, the thing that balances your sugar levels, which is your pancreas and your beta cells, literally choking them out. So it's important for us to know this information and know, and that's what I'm saying, like, the soul food's been killing folks since forever. And a lot of people don't know that one fried drumstick is equivalent to eating a stick of butter when it comes to saturated fat. So think about that next time you chomp on a piece of pot pie cheese. Find and start your own plant-based eating and exercise groups in the area. There are a lot of, they're starting to happen now more and more, but urban gardens. Start your own, start trying to grow something in your backyard if you have one. You know, food banks. You know, reach out to your local community. There are a lot of groups out there that are trying to get into the urban communities and make a difference when it comes to getting healthy food into people's homes. Do your own research and get informed. I just play football. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor, or none of this like that. I just do my own research, and I'm passionate about, you know, the information that I receive. So do your own research and become informed yourself, and find out how you can help yourself. Don't rely on a doctor whose job is it to prescribe you medication and tell you, oh, like when you get cancer, oh, now you got to do chemotherapy, but they neglect to tell you that chemotherapy is a 97% failure rate. They don't tell you that. And it's the only legal form of cancer treatment. Chemotherapy and surgery, they both have 97% failure rate. Both of those are the only legal form of cancer treatment in the United States. You wonder why that is. Why you got to put a cap on it. They don't think people, but that Kaiser too, but then you also have to think too, like the people that are getting, you know, are they going to get benefits from telling people the same? You're different. You have a different mindset than these people. You know, doctors are like politicians. They can tell you a lie to keep the money coming in. You know, there's no money in the cure. You are a plant-based doctor, which is different. You're prescribing medicine and all that. I mean, medicine through vegetables and trying to eat better to live better. But for other doctors, they don't even give you 15 minutes before you have to, you know, just for checkup. How are you getting a checkup? What are you checking on my body in 15 minutes to tell me that that I'm healthy or unhealthy? So it's not just the doctors. There may be a few doctors like you who are plant-based doctors who are saying this, but it's not just the doctors, it's the system.
I agree with
So, all right, one thing, okay, I said, do your own research. Don't beat yourself up in changing your lifestyle. It takes time. I did it overnight, but I'm special. And so, remember, you only have one body. You only, and I say this all the time, and it's different. Like a lot of, when people talk to me all the time and ask me these questions, so is veganism, it's not weak, it's still masculine, right? And I'm thinking like, man, first of all, what is masculinity? And then two, it's because it's masculine, it's a broad definition of masculinity. It could be anything. People think beating someone up is masculine, or going or eating meat is masculine. No, it's not. You know, it's a responsibility is really what it is. Anyway, I'm gonna get off of it. But anyway, as a father, if I was a father, I don't have any kids or nothing like that. But if I had kids, I'm not gonna feed them foods that I know that are gonna cause issues for them later on in the future. That is literally poisoning your child. You'd be a mother, father, whatever. Poisoning your child if you give them, just something simple as French fries. It has 11 different cancer-causing ingredients in it. People don't know that. A hot dog. The World Health Organization just deemed that eating 4 hot dogs is equivalent to smoking a pack of cigarettes. So next time you feed your child a hot dog, and you think it's just a hot dog, it's just meat. No, it ain't. So it's important for you to learn about this information because we're talking. There's a lot of talk about black people of color feel like there's a mission to take us out. But if we don't educate ourselves, then they don't have to take us out. We're taking our own selves out. We're worried about police shooting us, so we're shooting ourselves in the mouth with a fork. So it's important for us to understand this knowledge, understand the knowledge, understand what it is that we're eating. Read the labels on the back. If you can't pronounce it, don't eat it. Did you know that Doritos, how many of y'all eat Doritos in here? Raise your hand if you eat it. I know some of y'all eat these Doritos. You eat Doritos. Did you know that Doritos use beaver butt juice to flavor their chips? So you can eat ass all day. You too, you laughing. But that's what I'm saying. You need to know the ingredients that are in your food. You need to know the ingredients that are in your food because they could be feeding you anything. And then at the end of the day, if things start happening and you have health complications or you wonder why, because a lot of the ingredients in Doritos chips also cause brain damage and all kind of other stuff like that. You have issues further down the road, they're just going to tell you, oh, well, that's your job. You should know what you're eating. That's not our fault. You bought our product and you ate it. It's not our fault once it exchanges hands. You need to educate yourself. And the thing about that is, too, I'm going to touch on GMOs real quick and I'm going to jump off the stage, but it's important for you to know what you're eating and not eat genetically modified foods either because 23 diseases have increased exponentially since the production of genetically modified organisms in foods. 23 major diseases, and new diseases are coming up left and right. And this is since the development of GMO foods since the 90s. So it's important for us to know this information, and then I think all right, and then I'm done, but I got time for Q&A real quick, and then if you want to ask questions, you can afterwards, I can talk to you somewhere.
So does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I had 2 questions. One was about your brother. I'm wondering if he does plant-based, the one who does NFL.
No, he's not plant-based, but he still plays. He's a linebacker.
Is he open to it though?
He's open to it, but my brother is, I would like to call brainwashed. He doesn't understand. He doesn't listen to it because I'd be like, bro, what's protein? It's meat, man. He's one of those guys. He's one of those macho, I'm eating cleaner. So I started eating, white meat chicken and all that. I was like, all right, man. And I asked him one time, yeah, man, GMOs. Oh, you mean investments? I'm like, what? So, he's just on the total opposite scale. He does mergers and acquisitions. He has 2 jobs. He does football and he does mergers and acquisitions as well. And it's just total different. He works for the man and I'm against the man. So we're just totally different.
And also just about coconut oil, because the saturated oil in coconut oil is I've heard 2 sides, that one is it's okay, it's plant-based, another that's not.
See, they're all plant-based. The saturated oils are made from nuts and stuff like seed or whatever, like the canola oils and stuff. But Crisco, that's all saturated oils, and they harden. The coconut oil is different and is in the makeup. And I read some articles on that as well. But I use coconut oil mainly on the outside. I don't eat much of it. It tastes good. It smells good when you cook it. But I try to stay away from it as much as possible. But I use it just mainly in external use. I don't know if that's not what you asked, but that's what I'm telling you.
Okay, we have another individual here.
Hey, I was hoping you could expand a little bit. You started to talk about gender performance and the performance of masculinity with meat-based diet, and how it's like that's a big reason folks are hesitant to move towards veganism, towards a plant-based diet. But like you touched on it, then you moved on. I was wondering if you could
Get back on it.
Yeah.
So there's some interesting studies that have gone on with masculinity and veganism, and one of the main things that stick out to me is testosterone levels in males that switch over to a plant-based diet. So they've done studies in that meat eaters and vegetarians, they have lower levels than vegan men, lower levels of testosterone than vegan men do. And that's because if you look at it, like your arteries and everything are clogged up, your body is not functioning with ease. So obviously, because saturated fat and clogged heart disease and all that stuff, you're more likely to have those issues. Also, erectile dysfunction is something that is heavy in people who are meat eaters. Because if you think about the male anatomy and what the penis is, it fills up with blood. So saturated fat and cholesterol, they clog up your arteries. If the artery that goes to fill up your member is clogged up with animal fats and cholesterol and all that stuff, then you're not going to be working with nothing. It's going to be limp out there. You don't got action. So that it just really shows that, like, what's the. And then I told you about how you're feeding your kids, you're feeding your children death. You're putting their health at risk. So there's a lot of things, like when you get to masculinity, it's a very sensitive subject, and I don't want to get too deep into it. But that's something. Those things right there, that's something that people who, when they talk about masculinity, that's what they refer to as, sex and being a beast in the bed. Well, if you're addicted, I'm sorry. If it don't work, then you're not going to be a beast in the bed. So that just eliminates you from being the big macho man, right? And that's you may as well just go buy a big old Porsche now, because So, and then also too, health. You're not going to be fit. You're not going to look good. It's your health. Like if you're trying to attract a woman, it's harder for you to attract a woman if you don't look the part, if you don't look in shape. That's what, women use their eyes to look at you. Okay, he looks fit, mating partner. That's just nature. That's just how, I don't want to get too deep into it.
We have a few more questions too.
All right, yeah, so I'm going to
Okay, then we just have an anxious audience.
All right, go ahead, next one. But yeah, that's it.
Hi, David. I wanted you to touch a little bit more on the nutritional persecution aspect of the milk policy in the schools. And don't you think a lot of that's like economic? But I always heard that the reason they push it is because they need something to do with the extra milk and cheese and the dairy subsidies.
Okay, so if you look at that, and then we can just go down to the part where it's more expensive to produce milk and cheese and eggs and all that than it is to produce vegetables. So that's just reasoning. It's not good. And then two, you have to look at the history of the milk laws and how it started. Why did they start in communities of color? And why is it till this day in the communities of color, majority communities of color? And that was another point that I was going to touch on, is that it's not just economic. The system is flawed through and through. Schools are funded by the tax bracket, the property tax of the surrounding housing of the school. So when you go into an urban city area, there's mostly apartments, so people aren't paying property taxes. So the schools aren't getting funding. That's why in the inner city schools, kids don't have books, they have photocopies. They don't have salad bars like they do in Beverly Hills or wherever else, not even in just like Beverly Hills, but just suburban areas. They have salad bars in the schools because the schools are able to afford that now. But when you go into the urban areas, they don't have that. They have McDonald's and Burger King and Pepsi and all that stuff. And it's a systemic racism in the system that is targeting, they're funneling unhealthy foods into the black communities. And then another way, like you were and my wife touched on earlier, is that the businesses are not even really trying to hide it. Pepsi just released a study last year, 2015, that through the year 2020, what was it, 86% of their profit growth is going to come through marketing to youth of color. So it's not like they're trying to hide it through words and stuff like that, small things, but it's still the same. And it just makes, and when I think about stuff like this, how they're trying to change the words, and they're calling, it's like calling saying thug instead of the other word, or blight instead of black people or people of color, we're going to call it infection instead. And that's why they didn't, and I look back at it, I'm like, that's why they didn't want us to read when we were slaves. They didn't want us to read because then we can look into the structure and how the system is built. And that's what's going on now with the police shootings and everything. They're seeing that the system is flawed, and now we have to change the system, and now we have to put our input into it.
Okay, we have another question here.
I had a question, but now I have like 5 more since you started talking. First, I guess I want to thank you for your presentation. A couple of things. I want to underscore what the doctor over there said about a person's desire to be healthy. I think it's really important for us to acknowledge that there are physicians who want to keep their patients healthy, and by and large, the general population wants to be healthy. I should say that I'm a health educator with a background in chronic disease prevention and health promotion. To that end, a lot of the work that I've been doing lately is on the social determinants of health and structural violence, which are things that you sort of touched on but use different words for. And so when I see your slide here with the solutions, I think that people that I talk to generally, as I mentioned, want to do the best that they can, but it's really, really difficult. Some of these things up here are very impractical and not reachable for the average citizen. So one, I want to ask specifically from your experience, where do you see examples of resistance and places where people who live in communities of color are doing work on their own behalf to have better health? That's the first question. And the second question is, are there any general resources aside from the Journal of American Nutrition or things like that that you can point a person to who wants to have a healthier diet?
Okay. So the first question was, all right, finding, are there, all right, so the first question you were talking about, there being, that's not going to work. I thought that bench was higher, and it's not. But the first question was the food in the area, how it's not how it's supposed to be, right? I mean, it's set up like this, and you're saying that, it's not as easy as it looks to just go out there and find plant-based foods in the areas. And that's true. I've been doing a lot of research and finding out that, people of color have been trying to do urban farms for the longest. And, we'll get a piece of land, and then all of a sudden there's an ordinance where we can't have that land anymore. They just take it from us, or there'll be restrictions on the land when we get it, where we can't have people on the land, we can't charge money for the fruits and vegetables that we're selling, even if you want to sell them at a low discount price. They're using these ordinances and these things to put restrictions on what it is that we're trying to do. But then you go into, like I said earlier, it's a complete 180. I lived in Venice Beach in West Hollywood area. I walk around the street walking my dog, and I see gardens on the sidewalk in these nice areas that I live in. It used to be different when I lived in South Central. They don't even have grass. I live in South Central, which is only 15 minutes down the street from where I live. Not that big of a difference. So, and then too, we have to look, there's systemic racism in everything when it comes to the laws. There's a thing called eminent domain, where people who like the black people who had land, eminent domain is when they just come and say, oh, we're going to take your land and we're going to use it and use it for the better of the public good. That's our excuse for seizing your land, right? We're going to pay you pennies on the dollar for your land. 97% of the people that they used eminent domain on were black people. 97%. They were taking the land from black people. And I said, "Good, I got to answer your other question." That's why that's why it's hard for us to get land and do urban farms in the city and area. And people of color want to get healthy. People of color don't want to die of diabetes and stroke and heart disease and all that stuff. We know that the food is bad, but that's all that is there. We don't have, like I said, we don't have cars to get into the inner city areas. I mean, to get out and to go to these grocery stores and come back. We're taking 3-4 buses to get to the grocery store. I mean, there are rules in place and laws in place that combat growth in communities of color when it comes to food, when it comes to finances, education, across the board. And then there was another question that you asked.
She asked about what resources,
What resources?
that you use to have a healthy diet.
So there are plenty of resources. You have you have Lauren Cornelius. She has things on her site. The Food Empowerment Project. You have the Outreach. They have stuff on their site. I have stuff on mine. There's plenty of sites you can go. There's everywhere. Just start doing the research. Go online and start looking up the history of the food that your people ate. That's what I did. Start looking at CDC studies. Start using studies from universities. They have the China study where they did a complete study of the China provinces and found and you know there's studies you go on and on and on. Harvard. I told you about the UCLA study. They have all of these things, and it's simple. You can just go online and go and find these studies for yourself. But yeah, it's simple. It's not hard. I mean, this is the age of information. You have an encyclopedia in your hand every time you pick your phone up. So.
Okay, we have 2 more questions.
Hi, thank you for your presentation and your information. It's been very helpful. You mentioned that you don't really do a lot of soy, and I know that for a lot of people who are transition, they start with soy-based meats and all that kind of stuff. And I know that I have 2 sons, and I know that I avoid soy for them. What do you use as your main source of protein so that you maintain a healthy weight? And
Yes.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I don't do too much soy. Soy is good because I mean it's convenient. They have like the Guardian products and stuff, and they're great conversion tools for when you're just starting out as a vegan or going into your plant-based. But I stay away from it, and I do more like legumes and nuts and legumes or beans and stuff. And beans. There's more protein in a handful of beans or nuts than there is in a steak. A lot of people don't understand, and there's no saturated fat, there's no cholesterol, all that stuff. You're not getting all the deadly pesticides and antibiotics and stuff that come with the meat too, that they feed the animals. You're not getting any of that, and so that's why. But there's in a handful of nuts and seeds, there's like 15 grams of protein in a cup full or less than a cup of beans, and that's what I do. And also too, when you eat beans, there's benefits to it, eating beans. It helps to improve brain power. It helps to cut fat in your body because of all the fiber. It helps to regulate your system. All kind of other beneficial things too. You know, when you eat McDonald's, there's no benefits to the food or anything like that. The food doesn't. It sits for 14 years and it looks the same. That's not food. That's a Happy Meal. It's a product.
Okay, we have maybe one more after this.
Hey, what's going on, Dave? Hey, I was curious. I know you played college as well as pro, and I was wondering, you know, coming from the SEC, like for me, were people scared of you because you went to a plant-based diet, because that like changes everything? Because I know when I was in Alabama and played, you know, everybody called me Big Becky, but they were kind of scared about what that would turn into.
Right.
You know, it was easy for basketball, but I was wondering how it was for you.
So for me, you know, I had some issues with it. I'm not talking about that. I'll just put it this way: the head coach, or the former head coach of the Raiders, he didn't like that I was vegan, and he told me, he was like, you know, because all the players on the team were like, man, how do you do it? They're like, you're 300 pounds, you're big as me out here. They were asking me for health advice, asking me how they want to cut some weight, but they don't want to lose too much weight. They want to put on muscle. Because they were intrigued to see a 300-pound vegan lifting weights with them, lifting weights with Justin Tuck and all these cats, and they're like, damn, all right, I asked this. And so nobody on the team, the coaches and the weight coach didn't know until the players told them, and they found out. And the weight coach called me in the office and was like, so you're vegan? And I was like, yeah. He was like, where do you get your protein from? And I laughed. I laughed in his face. And he was like, "What are you laughing at?" I was like, man, it's crazy to me that you're a weight coach and you don't know what protein is. And then the next day, or was it 2 days later, like that was Friday. So Monday I come back and they're like, the head coach is like, "Oh yeah." So the weight coach goes, the head coach wants you in his office. And I'm like, okay. I was like, well, what's this about? Why is the head coach calling me in the office? And then they go, the head coach sits me down. He goes, "Oh, I hear you're vegan." And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, so we had 2 players last year that were vegan, and it didn't quite work out for them. And I was like, what's that supposed to mean? Right? And before then, the chef on the team, I told her, I'm vegan, so can you just make some food that doesn't have milk in it or butter or something like that? And she made me like a vegan lasagna, and it was delicious, right? And they were making me all kind of stuff. And that was like for a few weeks, and then the head coach called me to the office. Head coach says that, the weight coach and the head coach happened. Head coach sits me down and goes, "So we had 2 vegans on the team last year, or they were trying to be vegan, and it didn't quite work out for them." The next day I come back, and then there's no vegan food at all in the training table. And I go and I ask the chef, and I go, "What happened?" And she goes, this is not me. This came from upstairs." And I was like, oh, so like everything. The broccoli had cheese in it. The mashed potatoes had bacon and all kinds of stuff in it. The only thing that was there was peanut butter. Like not even the bread. The bread had egg in it too. Everything had animal products in it. And then the following day they released me from the team, and they didn't give me a reason why. And it was just like, oh yeah. And I was trying to ask, and they were like, oh, there was nothing, no reason for anything. It was just after that conversation and the switch of food, that's what happened. But because people are literally afraid of it. And then you have to think too, like, look at what is look at the NFL and what it is, and who are their sponsors? Papa John's, Tyson, McDonald's, and all that stuff. So yeah, it's intimidating to see a big 300-pound vegan on D-line, and it's like, but that's how that goes. It's very political. Everything's political. That's how it goes.
Okay, we have one last question, and I guess you can take a Q&A afterwards informally, because we are really crunched for time.
All right. Yeah, I'm done.
Right here. Thanks again for taking the time out and presenting the lecture. We talked a little bit about how combating food deserts. What are your thoughts about utilizing hydroponics in urban communities? I know ownership is a huge thing in African American communities, and you touched a little bit about eminent domain. Increasing ownership in those communities and also having utilities to grow our own food is something that we probably need to do more of. And especially where I'm from in Cincinnati, we have like a lot of buildings that are just sitting there because